Uh, so to clarify, if you measure it with this measure unit, you realize what's positive, what's negative. It's showing up a minus and plus. There is no sign on the measurement. But as I understand it, this is the gravity field. This is the magnetic field, and when you serially couple them, uh, this time because the health batteries are really made in a different way, because you cut it in 5 pieces and you serial couple them very differently. But and also the difference here is that it's important uh, to not mix up the gravity field with the magnetic field around. So there is a plastic wire that's going straight through the health unit battery. But in this case, I prepared a lot of nano-coated copper wires, and you actually attach them together when you're looking for electromagnetic energy, and so that's why the plastic on the edge is open, because that's going to give you much more so-called electricity. So that's what I used this time around, and and I wanted to make an interesting fight between the coils from the Magrav unit and the new magical unit. And so I made 55 spin from a Fibonacci number, and I actually increased the thickness of the copper from 1.6 millimeter to 2 millimeters. And if you think about if you take only Fibonacci numbers, it's going to give you naturally 154 spin on the outer coil and actually 89 in the inner coil. And when you add the number of curves, it's only twice. So it's twice 144 and twice 89. And when you have your calculation straight and you put 3 times that amount, that's going to give you the explanation how much energy you can store in your Magrav unit. Because when you're connecting between the gravity and the magnetic field, such a strong capacitors, it's actually declaring a kind of war between the straight coil and the circular coil. And everything that is in between seems to be, for example, when you're talking about a capacitor or a humiditor or a compressor, then you're probably out of focus, because you have to understand what the compressor is doing. And I'm sure of it, that it can't be just to get the compressor. It actually, you have a response from the Magrav unit, what the compressor is producing. And that's why I mentioned the transformation from molecules, because what is heat and what is cold? We're taking cold matter and make it warm, and the opposite. And so when you realize that these are molecules, then that's the Kickstarter, and you can increase consciously. For example, if you compare this unit of 4 times 55, and you make the calculations of number of spin together from a 3 stacker unit, then you realize that the war is very interesting, because now the Magrav unit is responding from Earth. It's not behaving like the Sun anymore, because if you seri couple them, seri connected the 3 units or the 3 coils, you realize it's still gonna imitate the Sun, giving 100% plasma out. But the capacitors, the stronger they are in number, always underneath the number of the 3 coils together, it's going to keep more and more power as you make your calculations from what any kind of number you want to use for the 3 coils compared to the responding opposite, which would be the capacitors. That's what I had to share.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Torbjørn.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah. So you're going to fire it up this afternoon here?
Yes. And you know, we this can't be any coincidence, because we have access to 5 fridge and a half, a smaller fridge.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the freezer, you know. And I kind of knew this before Carolina got out with the Douglas's video. So in my case, it's going to be even more interesting, because I'm preparing the coils for a 9 stacker, and I already have a 5 stacker unit, and I have a 6 stacker upstairs. And of course, this is going to be extremely interesting, because if you think about it, if you have a 6 stacker unit or a 9 stacker unit, you're going to have naturally 3 births of a vortex from a 9 stacker and 2 births of a vortex from a 6 stacker. And when you combine the two, the number of spin from the inner and the outer coil coming from a 6 stacker, it only means that you can increase the capacitors, giving a higher result as you can use the measure stick, seeing that you actually collect more and more energy from 3 to 5 kilowatt to maybe 11, 13 somewhere. So,
yeah, Mr. Kesh yesterday said that these base units as they are now can provide 5 to 10 kilowatts easily, and up to
exactly.
and up to 100 with a few modifications, up to 100 or even 300 kilowatts.
Exactly, because when you look at Douglas, when he's the more he approached the Magrav unit, the less heat he gets from when he puts all the load on, and it actually means it kind of proved my statement that it's not about compressors or capacitors. It's actually about what the compressors are creating, from atoms to isotopes, and when you see that, when you can look more carefully between the air compressor and the fridge, and from those 2 units to a motor that is only spinning a wheel, then it's like you can actually connect the torsion field and use the torsion field much more, far beyond any contentment of pH level, and then just realize cold and hot as much as sour and sweet, or clean and dirty, which is in this case would be the composite of food gases. It's rather dirty with a strange smell. But the fight, I guess the fight is between what we call the capacitors and the coils. So when you increase the coils, it depends on how many spins you have from the McGrath unit.
Do you think adding the capacitors into the overall thought that is on the compressors, it's like you're raising the capacitance in a cascading type of?
Yes, but it's already a principle that goes by or surpasses the phenomenon of cascading, because when you realize the speed from the McGrath unit to the capacitor, it's a different speed altogether. So even if you throw all your intention into cascading effects, it won't work. It won't be understood, because the speed itself is not only cooling down the McGrath unit, and as you know, the closer you get to the McGrath unit, it's cooling down. But I've seen that. I had a bet with an electrician, and because he doesn't understand much of plasma technology, and he was telling me that if I put another unit on from 3,000 watts, the fuse box is going to explode. And I said, okay, so let's test it. I bet you on the contrary, you can put 2,500 more watts, and the fuse box won't have a reaction. And he kind of smiled and was very sure of himself. But we put much more than 2,500 more, and the fuse box didn't explode. And on the contrary, in the beginning, the wires got quite hot, but then it all cooled down. And we kept on testing this up to 8,000 watts, I think. That was not at my place, but from the double McGrath unit. But what is important to see here is that when you look at this McGrath unit, the difference between this and usual ones are that they have split coils. And I realized that as soon as I had the split coils, they were getting stronger. The vortex were stronger, and the influence from the gravity and the magnetic field was stronger as well, compared to the other units without split coils. But when you look at this, it's actually a huge split coil. You see, because you're putting this gravity, this magnetic field, straight between after the McGrath unit is serially connected, which means that now you have a war. You have a contradiction, creating two different fields, one from the straight coils and one from the circular. And since the one in the circular coil has a center, well, if you compare the center that we call the Gans grain, when you look at the Gans grain and you compare it to what kind of energy you get from compressors, it's going to look alike. So it's like a responding field between the result from, for example, a compressor, and what we have from the liquid plasma on the top of the gases that is filling out in a ping pong ball. So I guess that operation is the clue to store the power. And it's not, I don't think it's electricity. I think it's a combination of plasma and electromagnetic energy.
Can you put it in the context of the alkaline and acidic conditions?
Absolutely, but when it's the same thing with the cascading effect. That when you realize what is really going on as a course, it's so far beyond minus and plus, or positive and negative, far beyond. Because when you find out that you can have an American element to an European or vice versa, that's just two testings. So, for example, when Mr. Keshe is saying that throw the whole unit in the water, you shall see. Well, if you were thinking as an electrician that would just explode, then that's game over. But I have my little finger is telling me that Mr. Keshe has a secret or an amazing experience when it comes to when you put the whole cake in the water and you realize that it's not going to explode. And so you kind of get away from usually measurement or earlier experiences when it comes to plasma, as much as quite enormous goodbye steps from the electricity as we used to know it.
Because just trying to look at it from a conventional point of view, like a lead acid battery, we have a lead plate and a lead oxide plate. One is acidic and one is alkaline, and the bath that it sits in is even more acidic to perpetuate the chemical reaction.
Exactly. And that's also the difference between health batteries and electric plasma batteries. It's a real big difference, because when you're aiming for a more conscious use of copper and zinc-based plasma GaNs, the copper and zinc-based GaNs, and you realize that the reason why you're doing this is because you're leaving the area of electricity, and you're aiming for nature, animals, and the human race in the health sector. So you have to kind of realize that the most heavier metals, the more you're into imitating electricity. But if you stay on when you concentrate on especially copper and zinc, either it's liquid plasma or the GaNs mixture, you realize that has a direct effect on our type of water molecules and cells, and that creates a whole difference. And if you use, for example, iron GaNs 10 to 20% in the health matter, for example, a battery, then you realize that the iron are not behaving. It's not making people behave much when it comes to health, although it leads to the fact that you can run longer distances. That's thanks to the iron. Not much, or maybe a part of it comes from the copper as well, but it's not staying. So you have to keep on drinking liquid plasma or get healed by coils made for health purposes with health batteries. And we're not using much the health technology with the MHU unit, MagRav Health Unit, sour and sweet, or clean and dirty, where you can mix all kind of metals in order to make the vortex and the gravity and magnetic field as it comes out from the circular coils to actually imitate electricity as fast as possible. So you can mix titanium, all kinds of different irons, and have quite a mixture just in order to get the field as strong as possible. But for health units, for plants and animals, it is very wise to stay with zinc and copper. Because that's creating more than enough healing. You use zinc to take away the pain, if there is any present pain in the body, and you use the copper to cut the symptom of the pain. And so they're working together perfectly. So for example, if you drink 50-50 liquid plasma zinc and copper based, it means that you are about to find your balance. And so I actually call this a cure, because the thing is that when you drink liquid plasma zinc based for 2 weeks, you realize that you have gone through a procedure where the healing is actually giving you images and films in your head from memory. And those memory are very much emotionally based. And you don't really get to realize that those emotions are coming either from your dreams or your unconscious mind when you're awake. So the difference is, in the dream is easier because there's no barrier, but when you're awake, it's coming from the memory bank like a big surprise. You were 5 years old and you lost your cat, and you didn't get over with it, and it's staying in the unconscious part, and this is going to create emotional imbalance. And the zinc-based liquid plasma is going to help you not only to remember it, but to get rid of it and accept it for what it was. So even if you think these days that it wasn't much and that's why I forgot it, the zinc-based liquid plasma field doesn't agree. So that's the reason why the zinc is taking memories into your consciousness only in order to get rid of it. And when you get rid of it, you're approaching the center of balance. And you know, so you drink 14 days of liquid plasma zinc based. In order for this to happen, you have to the more and more consciousness you put into it, the better the faster you go to your state of balance, which is different from one human being to another. And simultaneously, what is actually happening in the cells and the molecules is that the cells and the molecules understand this very fast. So even if you're not ill, or even if you don't have a disease that you know, it will sustain more and more in shape, and then later, after 14 days, you can start to drink liquid plasma copper based in order to tell actually your cells and your molecules that now you're getting happy and more in shape. And so when you send in the copper, that has to do with genetics more than emotions. And the genetic means actually that if you don't remember your forefathers, you know, what they used to do and how they used to think, that's gonna bring in from the DNA the memory from the copper side, which has less to do with emotions and more to do with genetics as in the now. So awake, or it seems that it's not the same thing with zinc and copper, because copper are showing you, for example, the walk you did until now. So it's from birth until now, and the result of it is here and now. So how do you feel inside, and how do you feel outside, physically and emotionally? So that's why it's hard to say that. It's a bit too easy to say that that zinc itself takes care of the emotions and copper itself takes care of the genetics, because they're working simultaneously. And when they get together, you won't really realize in the beginning that you are actually more and more in balance, because when the problems are getting up to the surface, it could be either unconscious relationship with the food that you're eating, as much as it can be an unconscious unbalance to your thought pattern. So when you get to realize this when you're following the cure, and you realize that when you add iron to it, or gold, you realize that's on the atomic structure. That's why it doesn't last. So because you're spinning the atomic, the particles are spinning faster you as a result. So you have to look into the details and see the difference between cells and molecules in order to make the full operation, allow the full operation into balanced state when it comes to genetics and emotions.
Did you consume any of the CH3 liquid plasma during the process?
Yeah. It's funny because when you look in the copper-based GANs, if you're patient, really patient, I mean by that in the beginning it's going to look white, your GANs mixture from the CH2, and then it's going to turn more and more as you're patient into a Turkish mixture, light Turkish. And many people are wondering, when is it going to turn in a beautiful blue? And if you look in the center of all the copper-based GANs, and you look in the corners, that's where the bluish color is appearing in the beginning. But this is after 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the quality of salt water that you have access to. But that, when you follow the hydrogen, the amount of hydrogen from the center, it's going to increase. And when it does increase, you get from Turkish to blue. So I don't know how much hydrogen you can get from the copper GANs, but it seems to me that you can surpass 4 and 5, and maybe 6. So you go from CO2 in the center, white, bluish, or Turkish, up to dark blue, because I've seen in most of my mixtures that the last containers that I empty are, in fact, you get to see dark blue. It's between ultramarine and cobalt blue, but it's either none of them. But it just look like dark blue, and it's on the surface of the copper GANs. And this is during a long procedure. So not only it depends on the quality of salt water, it also depends on how the plate is nanocoated and the copper itself, because during the procedure from 2 to 5 weeks time waiting, you realize you get further and further into the essence of the metal, which in this case is copper. And when you do, you get a richer and more stronger hydrogen value into it. And this is very important, because even if you have a difference in results and different results between the CO2 and CO4 and 5, it's not stronger compared to CO2. It's just that it's asking you, what do you want, and how much of it do you want? That's the difference. So it's not stronger compared to the CO2. It's
Yeah,
just
that's like
the potency is higher.
yeah, like yesterday I was telling Rick I made CH3, CO2, and copper oxide GANs the slow process way with a discharge fan, let it sit for like 3 months, but they all were white. They were all white. The only thing I could tell the difference, there was a streak of orange in the CH3 and a streak of blue in the copper oxide, but they all three were white, and I didn't understand.
That's probably
What did I create?
CO1. No, I guess patience is one thing, of course, but another thing is exactly how did you do it? Exactly how? All the small little things are so important.
That's why I thought I created calcium oxide, because I used local seawater, which Rick probably said had a lot of calcium in it, and so that's the reason why I produced more calcium oxide white than the plates that I put in within the bath, perhaps.
That might be, because what we discussed earlier is very interesting when you get from chaotic result from the coating procedure. Chaotic means that it has a different charge as a result from what you actually meant the how you meant to use your nano-coating system. And so chaotic is just interesting if you're forgetting for a while what's right and what's wrong. And you see the different products coming out of it, because, of course, when you look at the result from one compressor to another, jump starting the Magrav unit, it's going to be hard to tell exactly what kind of molecules are running around from the Magrav unit to the compressor or in the compressor.
And then I think that goes back to that question about matter and non-matter. We're talking more about fields, not particles.
Exactly. That's what I figured out when I started my double core Magrav unit. That when you actually get to see the fields with your own eyes, reality gets quite ironic, because the color particles, depending on the focus, when you're looking at the color particles as you can see the current, they're going to tell you what it is. And sometimes they're mixed. It's like, for example, if you look at the entire DNA and you compare it to a snake with a tail and a head, and you realize that a small little part of the capacity from the DNA is what we call amino acid. So when you focus on the amino acid as a phenomenon produced from different organs, they don't look alike, the amino acid, and then you realize that, wow, the more and more you look at it, it's like molecule combinations. And depending on the combinations, it's going to give you the skills. So instead of learning the periodic system by heart, which is useless, it's much easier and better to use experience. And this technology allows us to use experience, and then you will know exactly what, for example, amino acid is. You will even see the charm of the differences. So when Mr. Keshe was talking about using the information from a trunk of a tree and see the result from an apple, you won't see the difference in the DNA between the trunk and the fruit going all through the leaves. because the combination mechanism in the DNA is so close to each other that you just have to look at it as beauty and charming, and kind of lose control. The more you lose control, the more you can see from different angles. And it seems to me that we better hurry to look at as many angles as possible.
So when you used the copper oxide, you didn't worry when you consumed the liquid plasma of copper oxide. You weren't worried about the maybe the disinfecting properties that may be in your stomach, that it might.
No, there is the only GANs I would really hesitate to drink liquid plasma is lead. You know, I don't want to get heavier, but when you drink, the liquid plasmas are going to show you very fast what you need and don't need. So, for example, zinc and copper is largely enough effective for plants, animals, and human being. But if you add heavier metals in your liquid plasma, it's always gonna end up either in your pineal gland and pituitary gland, or it's going to be on your atomic structure, but it's not going to stay. So in order for this to stay, you have to dive into the effects of copper GANs itself, liquid plasma, because the copper, it's not easy to understand, because when you look at cells and molecules, it's the same DNA and the same memory. It's just that when the zinc liquid plasma or literally the GANs are put on the cell structure, you realize that it's taking off your rids, the facial lines. But that's not what is happening at all. That's a big misunderstanding, although it is the result. What is happening is that it's using the DNA structure from the cell, using its memory to go back to a natural shape. That's the truth of it. Because when we are unconscious, as much as conscious, 50-50, the cells on the molecules are responding to your mind thoughts. It's giving you consciously and unconsciously orders to obey. And when you cut that kind of attitude towards your cells and your molecules, then you can see and feel how the copper and the zinc is helping the body, how it's talking in the now, because the cells and the molecules doesn't have time and space. So what is actually going on is that you have to square up, forgetting about your belief system, just put it in the garbage. It was worth nothing, and the fact that you came from your mother and father and have that memory from in the genes doesn't mean it. Doesn't mean a thing either. And so when you realize that these two factors are going to play a major role for you to get into balance, then it's not a surprise. You have one physical state and one mental. And the copper it's a bit harder than zinc, because zinc is absolutely connected to what we call in mysticism Christ energy. That doesn't have anything to do with Jesus Christ. The zinc, you know, for example, I have a zinc coil here, and I would really recommend for everybody to get one of these and hold it. If you hold it, the first reaction that you're going to get, and I don't feel much in this physical world, but when I hold this, it's gonna hit you. The kindness. It's a very particular kindness that is the beginning of the energy coming from this zinc coil. And it's the same thing if you bend over in your zinc tank or a zinc container as you wipe the sauce, you realize it's the same feeling as the coil. It's gonna hit you. A very particular kindness. And then when you allow this procedure to happen through kindness, I could speak for 2 days when it comes to that particular kindness. But if you allow that part first energy to happen, then the zinc is going to introduce other phenomena that it can provide for nature, animals, and the human race.
Can you speak about iodine and how that interacts with the body?
Yes, iodine has very much of the same skills as next to iodine, I have a new information when it comes to the usage of salt water. If you look at iodine as one of the most effective elements that we can use in this plasma technology, you realize what is the center, what is in the body, what is the real receptor from iodine, and you realize that it has to do with your words, your expression to words, how to find the balance between your emotion and your expression, which in this case is the word. And what I now call neutral amino acid, I don't have other words to express it, because neutral amino acid means that when you realize that there is iodine in the salt water, you can actually use salt water and put iodine into it, so you can keep a bigger structure than iodine as a lone product. And
is that seawater or fresh water and salt made?
Seawater.
Seawater.
Yeah, and the reason is because I've seen that when you pay attention to the load side on an MHU, and you realize that we're using salt water, it's so simple. But in the salt water, we have the what I call the neutral amino acid. It's not neutral in the usual sense. What I mean about neutral is it's actually that when you aim on somebody's body using the pain release pens, when you aim at people and the bodies, you use consciously, more and more consciously, the amino acid from the salt water going straight through as energy from the plasma batteries towards the coils, and in this case, it's a very sophisticated health pen, and there is 2 of them. And now you're using especially two skills where you have iodine as ready to work with you with the natural amino acid from the salt water. And when you realize that there is another obvious secret in the salt water that we didn't pay much attention to, and that was the natural I forget the word. from silicon, the natural silicon in the salt water. And if you keep the understanding, the difference between the energy from the silicon and the essence of the silicon, then you realize the same way we're using nano material. We're not using the nano material. We're using the fields that we can surf on. And in this case, you really need, if you want a third set of teeth, using ghost DNA as a base, then you have to go to a more better understanding on a physical scale that has to do with the tooth tissue, the tooth, and the idea of a new birth. And we know now that there is at least 2 accessible elements using them from the iodine and the neutral amino acid from the salt water plus the silicon. And the silicon is very much used already, but in a physical shape. So it's very it's a small favor that silicon mixtures are the dentists are actually using in order to imitate a natural tissue. You use silicon. And as a parallel to the new pair of boobs you can have. But the idea of the birth, one wouldn't be surprised to see that you have actually the essence from the silicon as much as using the essence from the available amino acid from the sea salt water.
Can you speak about cobalt? I was trying to see if Jackie could tell us how to get it from, because Mr. Kesh said vegetables was one of the best ways to get cobalt. And if you could speak about cobalt.
I have no idea. No experience whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate the share.
You're welcome. That's why I exist, to try to answer on with enthusiasm and honesty.
And then calcium. Do you have any insight to calcium oxide, the GANs of calcium?
Yes, but it's a pity because Monique, she's much more into, because what we did here is something that really is amazing to use. It's just like as a parallel to calcium. This is a mixture that seems to be very natural when they come together. It's liquid plasma zinc based, and liquid plasma coming from the sour salt fruit. And so when you do this, it's extremely good for the atmosphere, as much for the skin and hair and physical things, and at the same time, you have to just make sure that you wash the soursop liquid plasma many times, because it does have a tendency to not smelling well. And the zinc-based liquid plasma is increasing the balance in the pH value as a result, just by mixing them. So of course this is very good to know as a general plasmatic rule, to test out the ganses, so you don't have to add, so you can try as much as possible to avoid mixtures from not from the plasmatic field, in order to force the pH balance not using our technology. Like for example, zinc and copper are, for the most part, is so powerful that you can actually just test out and see that you're coming up and down in on pH. So it's much better to use zinc and copper for this than buying some fishy product that is going to give you a pH value, but pH balance, but it's not sure that you're not killing some other skills during that procedure, killing amino acids from certain kinds of fruits and vegetables and so on.
I found that a CH liquid plasma with calcium works very good on psoriasis, like rashes on the body. It seems to work very well for people that suffer with plaque psoriasis that is on the skin. It seems to work very good.
That's really interesting that you're saying. Monique, can you please repeat that? It's worth hearing once again.
Yes.
Yeah, I found that a CH liquid plasma with calcium works very well for psoriasis.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, because we have a couple of friends with severe psoriasis. Thank you. Thank you very much. Calcium. Okay, I'll work on that one. Thank you.
Mostly CH3 GANs with calcium in the liquid plasma state. You can use it topical. Works very good for psoriasis.
Okay. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Have you made calcium like a calcium GANs?
Not yet.
From bones? Mr. Kesh was saying from bone you can make some calcium GANs.
Yeah, I haven't tried it, because I have only one butcher I trust here, and he's on holiday. So I'm waiting for him to come back, because he has access to animals which are not treated with cruelty, and so he will be able to give me some nice foods.
Yeah, I didn't know if Jackie had any experience, because he seems to know a lot about that too.
I don't know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Does anybody have any other questions for Monique or Torbjørn? Be sure to come live when he's testing that unit out.
Yes, he's just playing around with his guns right now. He's working away. Oh, he's back. He's back. I will just hand him back to you.
You know, Flint, I've been mentioning a phenomenon. I think it was a couple of months ago, and it's like now it's even more clear. So you know, when we're watching Douglas approaching the White House, and of course all the people from the Keshe Foundation thinking about him and so on, taking the whole trip for granted, that nothing bad is going to happen to that guy. You know, he's our hero.
Yeah.
Well, when you you know, the compliments that you deserve, Linton, you, Rick, all of these efforts are starting to look more and more like a culture. Where the definition of culture is doesn't depend on how you lived yesterday. It can be very fast understood, and you realize that you're living intelligent life, as much physical and spiritual, or mental, on the mental level. And this culture, it's like if we think about what is going to happen in our close future in Rome, when we get together once again, and you realize that what was actually going on for all of us in Dubai was that there was no hero there. We were all heroes, and after a couple of days, we kind of all felt that we can go home and keep all the Keshe Foundation members in the heart, because what I discovered there was not some usual convention. There were all, 150 honest people, which is a great shock compared to other kinds of congresses, and it has to do with culture. That you realize that you're not into some fancy technology, or you're into a fancy culture, and the galactic attitude is part of the space program for us, the Space Institute. And when it comes to Jackie's efforts and his careful ways, although Mr. Keshe from time to time have not shared the carefulness to Jackie, and said, I hope you eat, you must eat some, at least a piece here and a piece there. And so that will be on the food sector, and all this global understanding that we kind of pick up here and there in the plasma technology. It's actually showing us that this is a culture. It's not a technology. It is a culture. And Michael Jackson's song, if you want to change the world, you start with a mirror. And when Mr. Keshe is talking about the power of zinc and copper, it's like when you listen carefully to what he's saying every time in the beginning of the Knowledge Seeker courses, he's only talking about copper and zinc. And there is a very good reason for it, because that's how you heal. That's how you heal all living creatures, in the plant and the animal and the human beings. That's how you heal. That's what you use to heal. And the response from the plants is directly combined to the roots of all kind of fruits and vegetables. And so that's not a surprise. It seems that we human beings, when we can agree about that this is a culture, we're part of a troop with a new culture and a new behavior towards technology as much as every day. The plants are telling that I'm going to hide my first secret if you give me zinc or copper-based gas in the roots. And Da Vinci said that if you want to discover the secret of the plant kingdom, it's not in